When Britney Spears burst onto the scene in 1998 with her infectious hit, Baby One More Time, she quickly became a global sensation. Her schoolgirl outfit, those iconic pigtails, and her undeniable talent captured the hearts of millions. For years, she dominated the pop charts, graced magazine covers, and sold out stadiums worldwide. To the world, Britney was the epitome of success, the ultimate pop princess living a life of glitz and glamour. The world saw Britney as a machine, churning out hit after hit, a beacon of relentless ambition. Yet, behind the scenes her life was anything but perfect. Behind the shimmering facade of fame and fortune lay a far darker reality. Despite being one of the most famous faces on the planet, Britney found herself trapped in a gilded cage, battling to reclaim her life and voice. Join us as we dive into the electrifying and tumultuous journey of a pop culture icon whose name alone conjures an era of music, fashion, and controversy. The whirlwind life of Britney Spears. Britney grew up in a chaotic home, finding solace in music and singing at the tender age of 5. Her talents in song and dance provided an outlet to express her voice in a household where it was often suppressed. Her father, Jamie Spears, had a tumultuous upbringing himself. Raised by his abusive father, June, Jamie endured strict military discipline and was groomed to be an athlete. Anything less than perfection was unacceptable. While Jamie excelled as an athlete, the relentless pressure took a toll on his psychological well-being, leading him to develop an addiction to alcohol. Britney's early discovery of her musical talents was not just a hobby, it was a lifeline in an environment where her emotional needs were overlooked. The passion she found in music became her refuge, a stark contrast to the turbulent family dynamics that surrounded her. Jamie was mean, apathetic, and cold. He drank until he couldn't think and would disappear for days at a time, turning the house into a nightmare. When he did come home, it was often in a drunken stupor, yelling and shouting before passing out on the couch. Meanwhile, her mother, Lynn, was plagued by nervous breakdowns. Jamie's construction business was failing due to his alcoholism, and Lynn responded to his growing abuse with vicious tirades of her own, all of which young Britney had to endure. At just 7 years old, Britney accepted that her father was not mentally stable. Jamie's obsession with discipline and perfectionism, inherited from his own father, left deep scars on Britney. Instead of protecting her daughter and shielding her from this turmoil, Lynn became consumed with her husband's troubles, leaving Britney to navigate the chaos on her own. While Jamie was pushing Britney's older brother, Brian, to excel in sports, he decided to prepare her for the stage. Britney first wowed the judges with her powerful voice at a talent competition in their small town of Kentwood, clinching first place. At age 8, she auditioned for the famous TV show, The Mickey Mouse Club, in New York. Despite impressing everyone, she was told to come back next year as she was deemed too young. The family had to return home, but their spirits were far from dampened. The impressed producers encouraged Britney to get an agent in New York City. She began working at her grandmother's seafood restaurant, cleaning shellfish and serving plates of food. 6 months later, the call they had been waiting for finally came, an offer from a talent agency. With this, Britney took her first step into the Hollywood scene. This moment marked the beginning of her incredible journey. She was a little girl with big dreams, yearning to shine like Madonna, Dolly Parton, or Whitney Houston. Summers in New York became a turning point. She attended the Professional Performing Arts School, diving into an intense program that included gymnastics, dance, and vocal lessons. Despite her young age, she approached her training with a level of professionalism, discipline, and drive that was truly remarkable. Britney first encountered Hollywood's ugly side at just 10 years old on the talent show Star Search. In her book, she recalls how a joke made by the host, old enough to be her grandfather, made her feel terrible. She cried backstage, and her mother consoled her with ice cream. It was then that her mother imparted a tough lesson. Verbal harassment and inappropriate comments were part of the journey, and tears didn't matter much on the road to the top. Soon, things started looking up for her. She starred in the musical Ruthless alongside a young Natalie Portman. Then came the Mickey Mouse Club, where she joined future stars like Christina Aguilera, Ryan Gosling, and Justin Timberlake. Hollywood meant relentless work, and being a child didn't offer any exemptions. Britney quickly realized that her childhood was left behind in Kentwood. She would never live like a normal kid again. From that point, everything started to fall into place for her. The bright lights of Hollywood beckoned, and Britney, with her unwavering determination and raw talent, was ready to answer the call. At just 15, she signed with Jive Records and began recording her album. Though still inexperienced and not fully aware of the magnitude of her journey, she adapted quickly. Growing up under Britney Spears' discipline, she was more hardworking and professional than any child her age. At 17, in 1998, her hit single, Baby One More Time, was released. She promoted the song with mall concerts, gradually building a fan base of young admirers. The song soon sparked controversy, both for its lyrics, Hit Me Baby One More Time, and its provocative, Lolita-like music video featuring Britney as a schoolgirl. The controversy, however, only fueled the song's popularity. When the album, Baby One More Time, was released in 1999, it skyrocketed to #1 on the charts, eventually selling over 10 million copies in the United States. Britney made history as the first female artist to have both her debut album and debut single enter the Billboard 200 chart at #1. This was a once-in-a-million success. No one expected a 17-year-old girl to take the industry by storm, but she did just that, becoming a pop phenomenon almost overnight. Sort of meteoric, capturing the hearts and minds of fans worldwide and setting the stage for a career that would leave an indelible mark on pop culture. While it might have seemed that her success was solely due to her managers, that wasn't the case. Britney herself was instrumental in her meteoric rise. A prime example of her influence was the Baby One More Time music video. The original concept was supposed to take place in space, with Britney as a futuristic astronaut, resembling a Power Ranger. However, she had a different vision. She insisted on the now iconic schoolgirl look, a decision that played a significant role in catapulting her to stardom. Those were the golden years of boy bands, with groups like NSYNC, which included her childhood friend Justin Timberlake, dominating the charts. Both NSYNC and Britney were signed to Jive Records, and when it was decided that they would tour together, Britney and Justin spent a lot of time together and grew close. The rest, as they say, is history. Britney and Justin became the iconic couple of the 2000s, their love story captivating the media and fans alike. However, it was also during this period that Britney began to experience the media's ruthless double standards. On red carpets, while Justin fielded questions about his career and musical achievements, Britney was bombarded with invasive and sexist questions about her appearance, such as whether her breasts were real.
There's one subject we didn't discuss. What was that? Everyone's talking about it.
What?
Well, your breasts.
My breasts.
You seem to get furious when a talk show host comes up with this subject. Okay, in general, what do you think about breast implants, just in general?
The way that media treated her, to be very high school about it, was like she was the school slut and he was the quarterback. She was targeted by the mainstream media, delighting in any opportunity to expose her for not being the good girl she was originally advertised as. Britney was a true performer, passionate about entertaining people. Creating iconic moments that would be talked about for years was her specialty, like when she revealed a shimmering nude-colored costume underneath a ripped suit during her 2000 VMA performance. But the industry was incredibly harsh on women. And Britney, at just 19 years old, had no idea how to fight back against the media's smear campaigns. Britney's stage performances and magazine photos quickly became a national issue, with the idea that she was a bad influence on children spreading like wildfire. In those days, without Instagram to read comments, Britney found herself seated by MTV, subjected to the harsh opinions of random passers-by.
What I would say to Britney, if I saw her on the street, I'd probably tell her, think about those 12-year-olds that listen to your music, and think about the 12-year-olds who saw you on the VMAs, and think what they're thinking. They probably are thinking that it's okay to dress like that, which it's not.
I'm not their parent, man.
Britney Spears doesn't have...
Britney didn't know how to cope with the immense pressure. All she wanted was to be herself without causing a backlash, but that was impossible. Everything about her, from her body to her sex life, was up for public debate. Her managers insisted she emphasize her virginity in every interview, a narrative that only intensified the media's obsession. The more Britney compromised, the more the media hounded her, prying into every aspect of her life. Desperate to manage the relentless stress, she started taking antidepressants. While other Hollywood stars would rather die than be seen without makeup, Britney was endlessly photographed in every state, no matter how vulnerable or unprepared she might be. This invasive scrutiny was a one-sided deal that profited the media immensely. Under relentless examination, her every move turned into tabloid fodder. Through it all, her desire to simply live her life without constant criticism seemed an unattainable dream. The more she tried to navigate the minefield of fame, the more entangled she became in its snares. The massive success of her second album, for world tours, and the iconic Snake performance at the VMAs cemented Britney's status as a pop legend. Despite being relentlessly criticized by the tabloids, Britney earned respect within the industry for her discipline, creativity, and sheer talent. During this period, Forbes even named her the most powerful woman in entertainment. Contrary to the dumb blonde image that some tried to pin on her, Britney was incredibly smart and funny. She hosted Saturday Night Live twice, impressing everyone with her comedic chops and acting skills in the sketches.
I mean, I told her to step off, and she was like, what? And I was like, no, you don't. And she was like, huh? And I was like,
While navigating the highs and lows of fame, she leaned on the person she was madly in love with and living with, her boyfriend, Justin Timberlake. Justin's fame soared beyond his boy band days with NSYNC, thanks in large part to his high-profile relationship with Britney. He became a major tabloid figure, and it was the perfect time to launch his solo career. The infamous breakup, delivered via a text message, was devastating for Britney. Justin's strategy of portraying her as the villain to the media further twisted the knife. He used his song, Cry Me a River, and the breakup as weapons to publicly shame her and propel his own fame. Despite this betrayal, Britney wasn't harsh on her first love. Even during the heartbreaking moment when she ended a pregnancy with Justin's baby at home, determined to keep it out of the tabloids, she held no grudge. Britney was deeply in love with Justin, so much so that she didn't care about him building his career at her expense. The only thing that truly mattered to her was that he was no longer by her side. The split sent her into a deep depression. She barely left the house. Her managers insisted she give interviews to explain her break and deny any signs of depression. Everyone, including her mother, went to great lengths to convince the media that Britney was fine. Whether she truly was didn't seem to matter to them. This period showed how those around her were more concerned with maintaining her public image than with her genuine well-being. Filling the void Justin left was impossible for Britney. Her parents were divorced, and her once angelic little sister, Jamie Lynn, had taken over the household with a rebellious attitude. Jamie Lynn showed no respect for their mother or for Britney, despite the luxurious lifestyle Britney's success had afforded them. Though the dynamics of Britney's chaotic childhood home had changed, her feelings of worthlessness persisted. Her mother became even more passive, far from the role model she desperately needed. In interviews, Britney would often say she wanted to be a mother like her own, yet she couldn't hold back tears while saying it.
And what kind of parent would you want to be?
I would like to be just like my mom. I would like to be just like her. Oh, I'm retarded. She's such a spiritual person and such a beautiful lady. So I want to be like her.
In her memoir, she reveals she always felt a sense of guilt and remorse as a child. She believed that everything bad that happened was her fault and that she deserved her unhappiness and misfortune. This guilt, a legacy from her childhood, never left her. This is why blaming Justin never crossed her mind. She thought, if I'm suffering, I must deserve it. After spending months mourning her relationship, returning to work and, consequently, to the spotlight was anything but easy. Her social anxiety was stronger than ever, making the transition back into the public eye an overwhelming challenge. During this difficult period, she found an unexpected source of strength in her idol, Madonna. Britney writes, she walked into the place and immediately, of course, she owned the room. I remember thinking, it's Madonna's room now. Stunningly beautiful, she exuded power and confidence. She modeled a type of strength that I needed to see. There were so many different ways to be a woman in the industry. You could get a reputation for being a diva, you could be professional, or you could be nice. I had always tried so hard to please my parents, to please audiences, to please everyone. I guess I take after my mother in that. This passivity comes from her. Madonna, despite enduring all kinds of bullying, had managed to stay strong. She was a disciplined performer who had mastered the art of attracting attention while ignoring hatred. Madonna became this strong female figure Britney desperately needed. Her resilience and unapologetic confidence offered Britney a new perspective on how to navigate the industry. Their shared passion for the stage soon led to one of the most iconic moments in pop culture history. In 2003, Britney and Madonna performed together at the MTV Video Music Awards, culminating in a kiss that shocked the world and sparked endless headlines. Meanwhile, the narrative that Britney was corrupting the youth was spiraling out of control. Her estranged father decided to step in, suddenly chasing after her and pressuring her to give interviews to the press. This culminated in the infamous Diane Sawyer interview, a product of relentless pressure. The interview's focus was disturbingly superficial, with Sawyer referring to Britney's midriff as the most valuable square inch of real estate in the entertainment universe. The entire strategy was to make Britney feel bad and stressed throughout the interview.
Am I seeing what I think?
That's probably one of the moments that I like the best.
You can pop your knuckles. Britney Spears is popping her knuckles.
Knowing Britney's well-documented anxiety, they exploited how easy it was to put her in a bad light. This interview, as Britney details in her book, was a trap set by her managers and the media. The fact that Diane Sawyer had somehow obtained a framed photo of Britney with Brad Pitt that she kept in her home suggests an inside job. Sawyer meticulously stressed Britney out by recounting her recent struggles,
A rough year.
ultimately making her cry.
We've had a year that would test a lot of people. Illness in the family, a breakup, this spasm of publicity about what happened from Mexico to London.
It was pretty rough, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Ah, weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Strong Britney. Yeah, it was a weird time. Ew. I'm embarrassed. Can we stop this?
She accused Britney of cheating on Justin and breaking his heart.
Of course.
He has gone on television and pretty much said, you broke his heart. You did something that caused him so much pain, so much suffering. What did you do?
Then, shockingly, she presented a quote from the then First Lady of Maryland, who said that because she felt Spears' sexualized image didn't meet the expectations of mothers in this country, if she had an opportunity to shoot Britney Spears, she would do it. Sawyer supported this comment. The Diane Sawyer interview was a masterclass in media manipulation and emotional exploitation. It highlighted the cruel extent to which the media and those around Britney would go to control her narrative. The interview wasn't about getting to know the real Britney, it was about perpetuating the damaging image of her as a fallen star. Britney's tears and emotional responses were used against her, further fueling the narrative of her as unstable and problematic. For Britney, this interview was a turning point. She was thrown to the media wolves by her father and managers, who gleefully tore her apart. Thus began the days of rebellion. Realizing that even her family didn't truly care about her well-being, isolated Britney, who now yearned for a loving family of her own. During this turbulent period, she met dancer Kevin Federline. In her memoir, Britney explains that she saw Kevin as a source of stability, strength, and peace amidst the chaos. Despite learning that Kevin had a pregnant ex-girlfriend and a young child, she didn't let that deter her. Reflecting on it now, Britney says, I was clueless. I was living in a bubble, and I didn't have a lot of good, close friends to confide in and get advice from. Despite everything, Britney married Kevin and soon became pregnant. This marriage was her attempt to create the family she always longed for, a refuge from the storm of her public life. Her decision to marry Kevin was not just an act of love, but also a desperate bid for the normalcy and unconditional support she never received from her own family. The anger she felt for years, compounded by her fluctuating hormones, reached a boiling point. In her memoir, Britney describes herself as a very angry pregnant woman, with emotions running high and raw. This anger became a vulnerability, one that her sister Jamie Lynn cleverly exploited. One memorable day, Britney stormed onto the set of Jamie Lynn's show, Zoe 101, ready to confront a child actor she believed was bullying her sister. She was fierce, protective, and determined to stand up for Jamie Lynn. However, years later, Britney discovered the shocking truth. The real bully was her own sister. Jamie Lynn had manipulated her, using Britney's protective instincts against her. This revelation was a bitter pill to swallow, leading to Britney's recent public apology for her misguided actions. It highlighted the complex and often painful dynamics within her family, where even acts of love and protection could be twisted into sources of betrayal. In 2005, Britney gave birth to her first son, Sean Preston, and just 3 months later, she was pregnant with her second son, Jaden James. The tabloids, already relentless, became more vicious than ever. In February 2006, Britney was caught driving with Sean on her lap, her baby not even 6 months old. The image sparked outrage, and she was condemned for putting her child in danger. Following this incident, she was forced to give a statement to the Los Angeles Department of Child and Family Services. Just a month later, the paparazzi struck again. This time, They captured a pregnant Britney nearly dropping Sean after twisting her ankle. The media latched onto the story, fixating on how she managed to save her coffee but not her son, branding her as a terrible mother. Since her rise to fame, Britney hadn't spent a single day without being humiliated by the media. Each photo that painted her as an unfit mother was worth millions. The media was very ruthless against Britney.
Not perfect, I'm human.
What do you think it'll take to get the paparazzi to leave you alone?
I don't know. I don't know.
Is that one of your biggest wishes?
Yeah. It's okay. I would like for them to leave me alone.
If you could talk to them as individuals, not as a group, what would you say to them?
I would just say that you have babies at home and you have a wife, and if you don't, you have to realize that we're people and that we just need privacy and we need our respect, and those are things that you have to have as a human.
Paparazzi swarmed her, and headlines screamed accusations of her being a trash mom. But amidst the uproar, the media wasn't questioning Kevin's whereabouts. Kevin had all but abandoned Britney and their children to pursue his own fame, supposedly recording an album but actually partying and getting high. History repeated itself as Kevin treated Britney just as he had his ex. Following her mother's example, Britney put on a brave face. She rationalized Kevin's behavior, thinking he just needed to let loose a bit. But over time, Kevin started acting like she did not exist. She had put her skyrocketing career on hold to build a family, only to be stonewalled by Kevin and his bodyguards when she wanted to see him. Even after their second child was born, nothing changed. Officially divorcing her practically estranged husband Kevin was a necessity for moving forward. But Kevin, unwilling to be seen as the bad guy, refused to initiate the divorce. Spurred by her managers and determined not to appear weak, Britney filed for divorce herself, igniting a fierce custody battle. The tabloid media was over the moon. From the start, Kevin seemed an odd match for Britney. Everyone expected her to be with someone like Justin Timberlake, Hollywood's golden boy. Kevin was not considered a good match for Britney. The media almost celebrated their divorce. No one cared how Britney, feeling betrayed by her closest confidants and seeing her dream of a loving family slip away, was holding up. After Britney broke up with Kevin, she entered a phase of living for herself, partying and having fun. The media, ever eager for scandal, painted these gatherings as drug-fueled escapades, but Britney insists in her book that wasn't the case. In a glaring example of the media's double standards, Justin and Kevin's public drug use and nightly escapades with various women never attracted the same level of scrutiny. This skewed perception played perfectly into Kevin's hands. He began giving interviews, portraying Britney as an unfit mother who shouldn't see her children. While Britney initially dismissed this as a ploy for attention, it soon became clear he was laying the groundwork for his next move. As the media's negative portrayal of Britney intensified, Kevin's custody case gained traction. In a devastating blow, he ultimately gained full custody of their children and started keeping them away from her. For Britney, who adored her sons and viewed them as her lifeline, this was nothing short of a nightmare. Reflecting on those times, Britney writes, "Looking back, I see that both Justin and Kevin were very clever. They knew exactly what they were doing, and I fell right into their trap. This industry is all about playing the game. I never knew how to play the game. I was a bad dresser. Hell, I'm still a bad dresser, and I'll admit that. And I work on that. I try. But as much as I'll own my flaws, ultimately I know that I am a good person. I can see now that you have to be smart enough, vicious enough, deliberate enough to play the game, and I did not know the game. I was truly innocent, just clueless. I was a newly single mom of 2 little boys. I didn't have the time to fix my hair before I went out into a sea of photographers. So I was young, and I made a lot of mistakes. But I will say this, I wasn't manipulative. I was just stupid. That's one thing Justin and Kevin ruined about me. I used to trust people. But after the breakup with Justin and then my divorce, I never really did trust people again. Despite everything she had endured, the relentless paparazzi chasing her for unflattering, million-dollar shots, abandonment by her husband, and the depths of severe postpartum depression, she pressed on. Determined and resilient, she channeled her pain and strength into creating her 5th album, Blackout, widely regarded as one of her best works. Walking down the street had become impossible. Leaving buildings felt like a military operation, she writes in her book. No matter what she did, Britney was fighting a losing battle. In February 2007, after weeks of being denied access to her boys, she was completely beside herself with grief. Desperate to see them, she went to plead with Kevin, but he refused to let her in. She begged, picturing Jaden James and Sean Preston confused and wondering why their mother wasn't with them. The thought was unbearable. She even fantasized about using a battering ram to get to them, feeling utterly powerless. The paparazzi, ever vigilant, captured every agonizing moment. She felt humiliated, her pain broadcast for the world to see. Everywhere she went, the paparazzi chased her, waiting for any misstep to photograph. That night, she gave them something unforgettable. Her long hair, a global trademark and a symbol of her allure, was something she knew people loved. She knew many men found it attractive, and every inch of her body had been scrutinized and discussed since she became famous. Millions of people felt entitled to comment on her appearance, to dictate how she should look. In a bold act of defiance, she decided to show them that she was no longer playing their game. With the world watching, she shaved her head, stripping away the very symbol of her public image. It was a shocking, powerful statement that screamed she was reclaiming her life, her identity, and her body. No longer would she be a puppet in their dirty game. She was Britney Spears, and she was done being controlled. She then made her way to a tattoo parlor, the flashes of hundreds of paparazzi cameras illuminating her path. Through the glass door, they captured every moment as she boldly got 2 new tattoos, each one a declaration of her newfound autonomy. In her book, Britney says, "Shaving my head was a way of saying to the world, F you. You want me to be pretty for you? F you. You want me to be good for you? F you. You want me to be your dream girl? F you." I'd been the good girl for years. I'd smiled politely while TV show hosts leered at my breasts, while American parents said I was destroying their children by wearing a crop top, while executives patted my hand condescendingly and second-guessed my career choices even though I'd sold millions of records, while my family acted like I was evil. And I was tired of it. Britney began making frequent visits to Kevin's house, desperate to see her children despite his frequent refusals. To evade the ever-present paparazzi, she made these visits at night, but there was no escaping their relentless pursuit. One night, determined to see her kids, she was tailed by 2 paparazzi. Every heartbreaking moment of her being turned away by Kevin was caught on camera, adding another layer of public humiliation and pushing her closer to her breaking point. Later that night, the paparazzi caught up with Britney and her friend at a gas station. One of them had the audacity to taunt her, saying, "Are you doing okay? I'm concerned about you." At that moment, something snapped inside her. She grabbed the first thing she could find in the car, a green umbrella, and stepped out, her frustration and fury boiling over. The paparazzi captured the now iconic image of Britney attacking a car with the umbrella, a photo that would dominate headlines for months. The incident became emblematic of her struggle, her pain, and the relentless scrutiny she faced. Reflecting on the incident in the 2021 New York Times documentary Framing Britney Spears, the paparazzo admitted that night was not a good night for her, but it was a good night for them because it was a money shot. When Britney recounts those dark days, her memories are haunting. After shaving her head, she became a pariah. Everyone, even her mother, seemed terrified of her. No one would speak to her, branding her as too ugly to deserve their attention. Her family's fixation on her appearance was painfully evident. She recalls her father expressing his shame, treating her with utter disdain, less than a dog, an ugly dog, when she was at her lowest. Meanwhile, the world reveled in her misery, mocking her mercilessly on television and turning her pain into entertainment. The public, who once adored her, now devoured every humiliating moment, further isolating her in a time she desperately needed support. During this dark period, Britney clung to opportunistic individuals who offered a semblance of support but had ulterior motives. Among them was paparazzo Adnan Khalib, who deceitfully sold her photos for a fortune, and Sam Lutfi, who posed as her manager but was anything but. These men saw her vulnerability as an opportunity to exploit rather than help her. Britney's family was aware of her being manipulated by these bad actors, who constantly fed her turmoil to the media. However, Britney had valid reasons for not trusting her family and seeking solace elsewhere. The betrayal she felt from those closest to her ran deep. Her distrust was later proven to be entirely justified, revealing a web of manipulation and control that extended far beyond the opportunists she turned to during her darkest hours. Her father, Jamie, insisted that the only way to regain custody of her children was to check into rehab and clean up her public image. Britney reluctantly followed this advice, cycling in and out of hospitals multiple times. She posted an apology letter to her fans on her website and worked with a reputable lawyer to persuade the court to grant her shared custody of her children. Despite these efforts, she was psychologically shattered. Her fifth album, Blackout, was released, but she wasn't in any state to promote it. Under immense pressure from her managers and father, she performed Gimme More at the VMAs. However, an encounter with Justin Timberlake backstage before her performance led to one of the worst shows of her career. The performance marked her return to the stage following her head-shaving incident. Riddled with anxiety, she experienced a full-blown panic attack before stepping on stage. The performance was disastrous, and once again, she became a laughingstock in the tabloids. Reflecting on this period, Britney writes, "All performers have bad days, but the price I paid was unusually high." After coming off stage, she broke down in tears in the dressing room, only to endure comedian Sarah Silverman's cruel roast shortly after.
She is amazing. I mean, she is 25 years old, and she's already accomplished everything she's going to accomplish in her life. It's weird to think that just a few years ago on this very show, she was this, sweet, innocent little girl in slutty clothes writhing around with a python. Have you seen Britney's kids? Oh my God, they are the most adorable mistakes you will ever see. They are so cute. They're as cute as the hairless vagina they came out of.
One of her biggest tormentors during this time was gossip blogger Perez Hilton. Throughout 2007, Hilton waged a relentless smear campaign against her, often teaming up with Jeffree Star. He documented Spears' very public mental health breakdown almost daily, calling her an unfit mother and wishing her dead, going so far as to peddle t-shirts and create posters after Heath Ledger's 2008 passing that said, "Why couldn't it be Britney?" Meanwhile, the custody battle was in full swing. Kevin managed to convince some of Britney's managers and security personnel to testify against her, leading to Britney losing the custody case. The thought of being away from her beloved children was unbearable for her. On January 3, 2008, she locked herself then 16-month-old Jaden in the bathroom, refusing to hand him over to Kevin. SWAT teams and helicopters were called to the scene, and the children were forcibly taken away. Britney was strapped to a stretcher and taken to the hospital, where she remained for 24 hours. During this time, her father, Jamie, and his key ally, Lou Taylor, had already started making plans to strip Britney of her freedom. As soon as she was admitted, they began discussing with lawyers how to take control of her personal life and finances. They looked for the most suitable judge to oversee the conservatorship case they were about to file. Britney had no idea any of this was happening. On January 31, 2008, Britney received a call from her mother, Lynn. Her mother claimed that the police were after her for drug use and instructed her to meet at a beach house. Britney, confused because she had nothing to do with drugs, agreed to go. She informed her boyfriend, Adnan, just in case. But it was futile. Shortly after arriving, dozens of police officers swarmed the house, conducting what felt like a dawn raid for a dangerous criminal. Britney was once again strapped to a stretcher and, amid police cars and helicopters, was taken to the hospital. On February 1, 2008, Britney's estranged father Jamie seized this meticulously crafted opportunity and filed for a temporary conservatorship over her estate and personal affairs, claiming without evidence that she had a dementia-related illness. Jamie had a network of collaborators. Together, they carefully chose Judge Reva Getz, known for granting conservatorship to families of wealthy and famous individuals, regardless of fairness. Jamie secured the conservatorship while Britney remained oblivious in the hospital. By law, a conservatee must be notified 5 days in advance so they can get legal representation before someone takes total control of their life. However, Britney's father asked the court to waive this right, and Judge Reva Getz granted it, keeping Britney in the dark. And Getz requested that her court-appointed attorney not leave Britney with copies of her court documents. Britney desperately attempted to hire an attorney to help her fight the conservatorship, explicitly stating she did not want her father controlling her finances. However, Judge Getz dismissed her chosen lawyer from the courtroom, ruling that Britney was incapable of hiring her own legal representation. This decision was later widely criticized for violating human rights. She ignored Britney's heartfelt plea, "Anyone but my father." Despite her protests, Jamie was appointed her conservator, and a court-appointed lawyer was assigned to her. With the conservatorship secured, Jamie took control of every facet of Britney's life. From her sleep schedule to her diet, social interactions, and even her wardrobe, Jamie dictated every personal decision. He also seized control over all of Britney's financial assets, including her past and future earnings. Jamie reveled in his newfound authority over his daughter's life and career. From his newly established office in Britney's home, he chillingly declared, "I am Britney Spears now." This blatant takeover transformed Britney from an independent superstar to a puppet under her father's command. Among Jamie's associates was Lou Taylor. Lou was determined to build her career and wealth off Britney's back. She founded a management agency called TriStar, and thanks to Jamie's conservatorship, Britney became her most prestigious client. The justification for the conservatorship was allegedly Britney's dementia, though no doctor or expert report supported this claim, only the word of Jamie and his cronies. This baseless assertion became the foundation for a decade of control. Under the conservatorship, Britney was forced to pay $500,000 annually to her court-appointed lawyer, draining her finances for years. Meanwhile, Jamie pocketed $6 million from Britney's earnings, while his associate and co-conservator, Andrew Wallet, took home $426,000 annually. Lou Taylor's TriStar received a 5% commission on all of Britney's income, in addition to a $16,000 monthly retainer. Over the course of the conservatorship, TriStar obtained more than $18 million in total. In stark contrast, Britney herself was allotted a mere $2,000 per week, a pittance compared to the fortune she was generating. While Britney's hard work and talent were exploited to line the pockets of her so-called protectors, she was left with minimal control over her own life and finances. Jamie wasn't the only family member exploiting Britney. Her mother, Lynn, seized the opportunity to cement her own control over Britney by publishing a book, Through the Storm, right in the midst of the conservatorship proceedings. At a time when Britney was at her lowest and her younger sister Jamie Lynn was pregnant at 16, Lynn capitalized on the family's turmoil, promoting the book across various TV channels and sharing intimate details of Britney's troubled past. These revelations didn't just betray Britney's trust, they were weaponized against her in court, bolstering the case for extending the temporary conservatorship indefinitely. Kevin also capitalized on Britney's plight, seizing every opportunity to exploit her vulnerable state. The greatest leverage Britney's manipulators had was her children. Kevin, whose rap career had flopped, turned Britney's desperate need to see her children into a cash cow. He began selling her access to their kids, extorting her for money to pay his bills. After Jamie secured the conservatorship, he filed for Britney to regain limited visitation rights. Though granted, these visits were heavily restricted by court orders. Just weeks after being declared incapable of managing her own life due to alleged dementia, Britney found herself guest starring on How I Met Your Mother. This decision, orchestrated by her father and Lou Taylor, was entirely beyond her control.
Abby, hang it up. I'm sorry. I just wish that...
Her home had been transformed into a command center, with her father's office occupying the living room bar. Each morning, Britney was handed a rigid daily schedule, which she was forced to follow to the letter. Any deviation meant facing threats of being forcibly hospitalized, humiliated in court, or losing visitation rights to her beloved children. This ruthless regime turned Britney's life into a carefully controlled performance, stripping her of any semblance of autonomy. The world saw her on screen, but behind the scenes, she was trapped in a nightmare of coercion and control. The contrast between her public persona and private torment was stark. Early attempts to seek help from friends like Adnan Khalib and Sam Lutfi were swiftly thwarted. Her father discovered her secret cell phone and secured restraining orders against these allies. Isolating Britney was crucial to maintaining control. The more alone she felt, the weaker she became. Britney was only allowed to interact with friends pre-approved by her father, under strict conditions. Security would arrive hours ahead of time to ensure no alcohol or contraband was present, and no one was allowed to drink in Britney's presence. Dating was similarly controlled. Managers demanded blood tests and non-disclosure agreements from potential suitors, revealing Britney's entire medical and sexual history to deter genuine interest. Her messages and calls were monitored 24/7 by a security firm hired by her father, and her room was bugged. Britney's diet was another point of control. Despite her rigorous daily exercise and rehearsals, her father never considered her fit and frequently berated her about it. No matter how much she dieted and exercised, Jamie was always telling her she was fat. She spent months on a diet restricted to chicken and canned vegetables, begging staff for a hamburger or ice cream to no avail. They had strict orders from her father. Britney endured this dehumanization to avoid worse consequences, such as losing access to her children. She later reflected in her book that she traded her freedom for nights spent sleeping beside her children. She writes, "My freedom in exchange for naps with my children." It was a trade I was willing to make. There is nothing I love more, nothing more important to me on this earth than my children. I'd lay down my life for them. So, I thought, why not my freedom? Meanwhile, Kevin reveled in a life of endless parties and drugs, ironically earning the title of Father of the Year from Details magazine during this chaotic period. Britney, exhausted from relentless work, had no say in her career. She was told what songs to release, what to wear in videos, and how to perform on stage. Her favorite album, Blackout, was the last one she had creative control over. Subsequent albums, tailored to the dance music trends of the time, felt alien to her. The conservatorship stripped me of my womanhood, made me into a child, she writes. I became more of an entity than a person on stage. I became a robot, a sort of child robot. On stage, she awaited cues from her team, stripped of her former command and presence. Britney was only allowed to be sexy under choreographers' strict supervision. Offstage, she was expected to revert to a robotic, childlike demeanor. Deprived of life's adventures and spontaneity, her creativity was stifled. It was clear this was a deliberate effort to maintain control over her body and mind, crushing any last remnants of belief in herself. I would do little bits of creative stuff here and there, but my heart wasn't in it anymore, she explained. As far as my passion for singing and dancing, it was almost a joke at that point. 13 years went by with me feeling like a shadow of myself. In 2013, Britney's then-boyfriend, Charlie Eberson, gave her some over-the-counter energy supplements that significantly boosted her performance on stage. As she started to regain her confidence and breathe new life into the outdated Las Vegas entertainment scene with her thrice-weekly shows, her father, Jamie, perceived this newfound confidence as a threat. Jamie feared that Britney's increasing capability would cast doubt on the necessity of a conservator. Seizing on the opportunity to reassert control, Jamie claimed she was addicted to the legal and widely available supplements, using this as a pretext to send her to rehab once again. Despite the fact that these energy pills were harmless and legal, Britney was forced into a month-long stint in rehab alongside severe drug addicts, cut off from her children during this time. While Britney lived a life where even her calorie intake was strictly monitored, her family enjoyed the luxuries of the beach house she had gifted them. Every time she summoned the strength to challenge the conservatorship, her family tightened their grip even more. In 2014, she tried to expose her father's alcoholism by requesting a court-ordered blood test, but the court denied her request. In 2015, Judge gets retired and was replaced by Brenda J. Penny. However, the change in judges brought no relief. The court's collusion with Britney Spears continued. On September 27, 2016, Britney appeared on the British presenter Jonathan Ross's talk show and decided to speak out about the conservatorship. But her comments never made it to air. The segment was cut, and the public never heard her voice. As long as Britney continued to smile and push forward in her career, rallying public support was an impossible feat, and she didn't dare to do more. Determined to break the cycle of the past 9 years under conservatorship, Britney began to say no. She performed 248 shows in Las Vegas, selling over 900,000 tickets, yet she couldn't freely touch a single cent of her earnings. Despite this, she aimed to bring something new to her Las Vegas show, hoping to perform songs from her new album, Glory. If that wasn't possible, she at least wanted to use remixes of her old songs instead of the same tired versions. But her team wouldn't allow it. Their fear was palpable. They didn't want Britney to start feeling like a star again. They didn't want her creative mind to flourish on stage, as it might question the necessity of the conservatorship. In 2017, amidst the constant rejection of her requests, Britney won the first ever Icon Award at the Radio Disney Music Awards. She attended the event with her mother and children, but what she saw on stage left her horrified. Other performers were doing mashups of her songs with the very remixes she had begged to use, singing and dancing to the dream versions of her tracks. To add insult to injury, her sister Jamie Lynn took the stage to perform Till the World Ends. All Britney could do was watch and pretend to be pleased. This was a new, creatively cruel twist to the psychological torment she had endured for a decade. Here was the music she had fought to reinvent, celebrated and performed by others, while she remained bound by restrictions. Fortunately, the contract for her Las Vegas shows, which she had grown to despise, was set to end in late 2017. Britney had managed to secure permission from her controlling team for a few months' vacation with her children once the shows concluded. However, as the end of the Vegas residency approached, her hopes for a break were shattered. Her father and managers ordered her to start touring immediately. When she pleaded for time off to spend with her children, her father threatened to humiliate her in court for breaching the terms of her conservatorship if she refused. Reluctantly, Britney agreed to the tour. This tour was worse than any before. She and her dancers lived like prisoners, needing to give 2 hours' notice just to leave the rehearsal space. The show was the same one she had performed in Las Vegas for the past 3 years, without any changes or new elements. When the tour ended, she realized that her promised vacation with her children was reduced to a mere 3 weeks. This was the breaking point. Britney understood that the freedom she had traded just to see her children was no longer enough. The only semblance of liberty she had was time with her kids, and now even that was slipping away. This stark realization fueled her determination to fight back and reclaim her life from the suffocating grip of her conservatorship. Her father and managers scheduled another Las Vegas show and signed the contracts without her consent. Britney's world crumbled further as she realized her voice and choices were meaningless.
And she can work too?
Two is her birthday. Is she going to be okay working on her birthday?
Sure. What do you want her to play?
I don't know. I mean, can she rehearse on her birthday?
She's gonna rehearse.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Her spirit, once vibrant and unyielding, was now a ghost haunting the stage. As she contemplated the reality of her imprisonment, she saw the stark truth. Her life, controlled and manipulated, offers no escape, no relief, and no freedom. In October 2018, Britney was supposed to step onto a stage set up in front of the MGM building in Las Vegas to announce her new show to the world. However, for the first time, she did something completely unexpected. She walked up to the stage, descended the stairs, and without saying a single word, strode through the crowd, got into the back seat of her car, and left. Her fans were shocked and disappointed, and the media lambasted her, calling her irresponsible. But they didn't know the whole story. Despite this incident, her handlers didn't cancel the Las Vegas show. The contract was already signed, so Britney was thrust into a grueling rehearsal schedule, whether she liked it or not. But having tasted a sliver of freedom for the first time in years, she wasn't about to let it go. During rehearsals, she mentioned that she was uncomfortable performing a certain move due to her age, fearing injury. She asked for the move to be removed from the choreography. This simple request was treated as if she had planted a huge bomb somewhere. The choreographers and managers immediately convened in a closed room, leaving Britney unaware of what was coming next. The following day, during her mandatory weekly therapy session, Britney faced yet another betrayal. Her doctor, citing a call from her manager, accused her of not cooperating in rehearsals and neglecting her medication, a claim she dismissed as absurd. When she declined to do another Vegas show, her therapist suddenly prescribed stronger medication. 3 days after refusing the Vegas gig, her therapist sat her down, claiming he'd received countless calls about her alleged noncompliance in rehearsals and medication lapses. Using this as a pretext, they informed her she would undergo psychological tests, which were merely a formality. Hours later, her father called, declaring she had failed, had serious issues, and would be sent to a rehab facility in Beverly Hills costing $60,000 a month. This marked a pivotal moment for Britney. She had briefly glimpsed freedom, only to be forcibly dragged back into the oppressive control that had defined her life for so long. In January 2019, in tears, Britney began packing her belongings. Threats loomed over her. If she didn't go to the hospital voluntarily, she'd be taken by court order. This was the price she paid for standing up against the treatment she'd endured for years: indefinite imprisonment. The hospital conditions were another level of confinement. She was kept in a single cell without a door, not allowed to shower alone, and observed by a doctor or nurse even when changing clothes. She had to sleep by 9 p.m., give blood weekly, and have her blood pressure checked 3 times a day. Britney, who had once commanded global stages with unparalleled energy, was now reduced to a shadow of her former self, trapped in a sterile, controlled environment. The stark contrast between her electrifying performances and her current reality was devastating. But even in the darkest moments, the fire within her refused to be extinguished. This was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of a new chapter in her fight for liberation. At the beginning of her book, Britney paints a haunting picture of her grandmother, Emma Jean Spears, who was confined to a mental hospital by her abusive husband, Britney's grandfather June. With her warm smile and bright blonde locks, Emma Jean shares a striking resemblance to Britney. But their stunning looks aren't the only thing they have in common. Emma Jean's life, marred by forced confinement and relentless abuse, mirrors the harrowing journey Britney has endured. Both women were thrust into mental institutions, subjected to heavy doses of the psychotic drug lithium, and faced an onslaught of control that stripped them of their freedom. The heartbreaking climax of Emma Jean's story is her tragic suicide after years of suffering in the hospital, driven to it by the very same drug that Britney was later given. Britney was barely surviving under the immense pressure, hanging on to life by a thin thread. In her memoir, she poignantly writes, "I look at the fact that I survived and I think, that wasn't me, that was God." For someone whose greatest joy was singing and dancing, being confined to a room and so sedated that she could barely lift her arm was pure torture. Britney felt she was enduring both mental and physical torment, and she believed her family was deliberately pushing her toward suicide. During this dark period, Britney was only allowed to see her children if she complied perfectly with all the conditions and did not protest. Even then, her visits were limited to 1 hour on weekends. By the second month, she moved to another building with other patients. Though everyone in the hospital was a psychiatric patient and Britney feared some of them, after 2 months of isolation, this was a slight relief. Reflecting on this period, Britney writes, "After those months in the hospital, I became fearless. Now I truly fear nothing. I might be the most fearless woman alive. It saddens me deeply. I shouldn't have had to become this strong. The hardest part was pretending to be okay. Looking anxious was seen as a sign I wasn't progressing. If I got upset or defended myself, I was seen as erratic and crazy. It reminded me of what I'd always heard about the way they'd test to see if someone was a witch in the olden days. They'd throw the woman into a pond. If she floated, she was a witch and would be killed. If she sank, she was innocent and, oh well." By the 3rd month, she felt that her little heart, whatever made her Britney, was no longer inside her body. Something bigger must have been carrying her through, because it was too much for her to bear alone. Britney believes it was her faith in God that helped her survive that hospital ordeal. Desperate for help, Britney sent messages to her mother, begging for support. Her pleas were met with silence. Turning to her sister Jamie Lynn, Britney was told to stop fighting, as there was nothing she could do about the situation. Britney's liberation owed nothing to her family, but everything to her fans. It was her dedicated fans who ultimately rescued her. One day, a nurse in the Beverly Hills Rehabilitation Center showed her a video of women on a talk show discussing her conservatorship. One of them was wearing a Free Britney t-shirt. Then more clips followed, fans tirelessly trying to figure out if Britney was being held against her will. This was her introduction to the Free Britney movement. But let me take you back to what led up to this moment. In the final years of her conservatorship, Britney began using her Instagram in a new, cryptic way. Her posts were filled with hidden messages aimed at her family, silent cries for help that caught the attention of her fans. Intrigued by these enigmatic posts, two comedians started a podcast called Britney's Gram, where they humorously analyzed her Instagram activity. This podcast quickly became part of an online rabbit hole obsessed with decoding Britney's posts, searching for hidden messages, cries for help, and hints of conspiracy. When Britney didn't announce her new Las Vegas show, her fans sensed something was wrong. It was announced in a post from Britney's account that she was taking a break to spend time with her family due to her father's illness, but fans noticed the absence of the emojis Britney loved to use. 3 months of complete silence from Britney only fueled their suspicions. During this time, the Britney's Gram hosts received a shocking voicemail from a paralegal who had recently left Britney's team. Though he had never worked directly with Britney, he had handled all the official documents and knew the truth. He revealed that Britney was being held in the hospital against her will. The hosts released a special emergency episode of their podcast titled Free Britney. This episode went viral, sparking the birth of the hashtag Free Britney movement. Fans around the world rallied, printing t-shirts and holding protests. This global pressure created a public outcry that eventually led to Britney's release from the hospital after 3.5 months. In her book, Britney expresses her deep gratitude. People from all over the world were asking why I had been kept in the hospital for months. I was all over the news. I don't think people knew how much the hashtag Free Britney movement meant to me, especially in the beginning. Toward the end, when the court hearings were going on, seeing people advocating for me meant a whole lot. But when it first happened, that got my heart, because I was not okay, not at all. And the fact that my friends and my fans sensed what was happening and did all that for me, that's a debt I can never repay. If you stood up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Britney did get out of the hospital, but her battle was far from over. She still needed to fight to reclaim her freedom from her father's conservatorship. Her family acted as if nothing had happened and insisted on being around her. But Britney wasn't falling for their manipulations anymore. She was still on lithium and still afraid, even becoming a bit paranoid. She believed they might be trying to finish the job and kill her. So, she decided to play nice, hoping it would keep her safe. Despite suspecting her phones were tapped, she and her lawyer devised a legal strategy. During this time, she grew to hate her sister, who kept pushing for new projects with her, and her mother, who had thrown away all her childhood belongings. Britney vowed never to see them again once she was free. On June 22, 2021, Britney took a bold step and called 911 to report herself as a victim of conservatorship abuse, setting the stage for her explosive court testimony the next day. On June 23, 2021, she delivered a powerful 20-minute testimony that shook the world. After 13 years, the court finally listened to her pleas. By September 29, 2021, Britney won a significant victory by having her father removed from the conservatorship. Her sister, Jamie Lynn, quickly published a book titled Things I Should Have Said and withdrew her petition to become a trustee of Britney's estate. This attempt to profit from Britney's struggle only fueled the anger of her fans, who saw Jamie Lynn's actions as opportunistic and unsupportive. Despite Britney tried to be a good and protective older sister, Jamie Lynn came off as ungrateful. In spite of everything, Britney, showing remarkable compassion, acknowledged the difficulty Jamie Lynn must have faced growing up in her shadow, possibly leading to feelings of blame and resentment. She also claimed that her mother, Lynn, played a passive role in the entire ordeal, essentially abandoning her. Even more shocking, she revealed that the idea for the conservatorship was her mother's. On November 12, 2022, Britney Spears' conservatorship was officially terminated forever. As a woman in her 40s, she breathed freely for the first time in 13 years. Reflecting on her newfound freedom, Britney shared, "I am just grateful, honestly, for each day. Being able to have the keys to my car, to be independent and feel like a woman, owning an ATM card, seeing cash for the first time, being able to buy candies." Her triumphant declaration of control over her own body, expressed through a series of revealing photos, was met with heavy criticism. Her sons, who grew up with Kevin Federline, had turned against her. But Britney has no intention of sacrificing her desires to please others anymore. She asserts, "If I posed naked for magazines for others, no one would judge. It bothers them that I have full control over my own body. Freedom means being goofy, silly, and having fun on social media. Freedom means taking a break from Instagram without people calling 911. Freedom means being able to make mistakes and learning from them. Freedom means I don't have to perform for anyone, on stage or off stage. Freedom means that I get to be as beautifully imperfect as everyone else. And freedom means the ability and the right to search for joy in my own way, on my own terms." Britney holds out hope for reconciliation with her sons, but can't say the same for her mother, father, and sister. She writes in her memoir, "I made peace with my family, by which I mean that I realized I never wanted to see them again, and I was at peace with that." Britney's story is a stark reminder that the media is a powerful force, capable of both building and breaking individuals. It's crucial for us, as consumers, to question the narratives we're fed and to approach sensational stories with skepticism and always seek the truth behind the headlines. If you found this video insightful and want to stay updated with more content that dives deep into the untold stories behind the headlines, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stay tuned for more videos, and as always, thank you for watching.